The Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals Act, also known as DACA, was an immigration policy that protected people who came to America at a young age from deportation. The recipients of this act were known as Dreamers. Many Dreamers went on to college and got very good jobs and became very successful. If it weren't for DACA, then the United States wouldn't have these intelligent people helping us make the world a better place. DAPA, which is the Deferred Action for Parents of Americans and Lawful Permanent Residents, was also an immigration policy that came out along with DACA. This law gave deferred action status to foreign citizens who had children who were either American citizens or had already obtained their green cards. Deferred action status didn't give someone full citizenship, but it did delay deportation. DAPA was a very small program compared to DACA, but it did still benefit foreign citizens who were in the United States. The courts have had many run-ins with immigration and immigration policies. The Supreme Court case Yick v. Hopkins happened many years ago, in 1886 to be exact. Yet it is still very significant. This case found that the 14th Amendment's guarantee of equal protection not only applied to U.S. citizens, but it also applied to immigrants as well. That was a case from a very long time ago. So now let's look at a more recent case. Recent as in it was handled in the Supreme Court in March of 2020, so last month. This case is the Kansas v. Garcia case. It was brought to the courts because it was concerning the Immigration Reform and Control Act that we mentioned before. This act made it illegal for employers to employ an unauthorized citizen. Everything went down when Ramiro Garcia was stopped in Kansas for speeding. When the officers checked his records, they realized he was already being investigated by the police. So they contacted his employer and they found out that the documents Garcia gave to his employer belonged to someone else. So Garcia was charged with identity theft and all that. And considering the Trump administration's views on immigration that will be discussed later, they viewed this ruling for the case as a win for their party.
The first slide is about President Trump's views on immigration and ways that he has affected it throughout his ongoing presidential term. Throughout his term, President Trump has made many executive orders that involve immigration. These include reshaping asylum. Asylum is basically an immigration status that can be granted to someone living in the United States that are unwilling to return to their country because of mistreatment or abuse and other things that have happened to them in the past country. Other executive orders are deportation and the visa policy. The visa policy is something that foreign nationals have to travel, enter, and stay in the United States. Another thing was President Trump's promise to build a wall. It is probably the most famous and talked about action that President Trump took. This wall would separate Mexico and the United States. This would be to keep illegal immigrants from entering the country as easily as they are. To this day, it is still being built. In January of this year, about 110 miles have been built on it, and by August of the end of the year, they expect around 450 miles to be built. Another travel restriction he has set is the travel ban from many Muslim countries. He set this in 2017, and it was to keep refugees from entering the country for 120 days and to keep immigrants from 7 Muslim nations out for 3 months. Some of the countries that were affected are Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Sudan. Recently, President Trump signed another immigration order that bans immigration for 60 days. This mostly affects the thousands of people overseas that are wanting to legally come to the United States. The recent coronavirus makes it even harder for people to come because of border restrictions countries have made, visa services that have been suspended, and refugee admissions are on pause, among other changes. This would also block about 26,000 green cards monthly. This does not include minor children of U.S. citizens or their spouses, and U.S. Armed Forces. The last thing on this category is the Trump administration. The Trump administration basically sums up all of President Trump's actions. The main goal is to prioritize American citizens over illegal immigrants. So the next slide I have is about the 2020 candidates and their party's views on immigration. The main candidates that are running for president in 2020 is now President Donald Trump, who is a Republican, and speaks strongly on his views on immigration and acts on them. And Joe Biden, who is a Democrat that promises to pursue a humane immigration policy that upholds Americans' values, strengthens our economy, and secures our border. Throughout history, it is proven that Republicans are set on the saying, Americans first, and are more likely to view immigration as a critical threat to the United States and support United States troops to stop migrants from coming into the United States. Republicans believe in welcoming those who enter the country legally and that illegal immigrants are taking jobs, homes, seats in schools, and tax dollars from legal citizens who have paid into the system their entire lives, and that illegal immigrants contribute to crime rates. On the other hand, Democrats do not consider immigration as a critical threat, and their views on policy greatly differ from the Republicans. They also believe that immigration is based on the idea that the United States is a country based on immigrants, and such, it should value and support its present and future immigrants to extend a path to citizenships for DACA recipients. This has also been shown during President Trump's ongoing term. So, in conclusion, Democrats are okay with immigration, whereas Republicans are not.
So yeah, welcome back to me. So you may have been wondering, what even happened during the last 100 years of the history of immigration? During the earlier part of the 1900s, the immigration rate actually dropped like a ton. That was until the 1930s when it reached an all-time low of just under 700,000 total immigrants inside the United States. Actually, during recent years, the rate has actually climbed and reached up to about 10 million. So that's a pretty big jump from, the 1930s. You also might ask, where are all these immigrants coming from? Because there's a lot of them in the United States right now. So according to a bunch of graphs, most immigrants are actually coming from just this group of miscellaneous countries put together. For example, if you look at Africa, there's a jillion different countries there. You can't just say that they're coming from Africa because there might be one country that people aren't coming from. So you just join all of the countries where people come from Africa in with all the ones from Britain, in with all the ones from wherever else. You see what I'm saying? Mexico is also a huge portion of the percentage because there's literally a bunch of people coming from there. Then with that, places like the Philippines, Guatemala, Vietnam, just smaller regions like that, there are also a bunch of people coming from there. So yeah.
How immigration will be handled in the future is in the hands of our future political leaders. Immigration is very much a social issue that is very controversial. Republicans and Democrats have very different views on the topic. If Republicans hold power in the next elections, then most likely immigration laws and policies will keep getting stricter and stricter.